Guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Solange. I'm back with the sewing aspect, aka part 2 of this DIY bralette tutorial. So we're just going to jump right into it. So we have a pattern here. In the event that you need to know how to draft this pattern, I will link in the description that video. Okay, so we're just going to place the part that says CF. That was for the center front. We're going to place it on the fold of the fabric, and I have my fabric right side up. However, it doesn't matter if you have it turned the other direction because we're using pattern to cut out our bralette. Now what I'm doing here is just simply adjusting my fabric. I noticed that the crease in the middle was not lined up properly with the square, and sometimes this happens with a lot of fabrics. So I'm just adjusting it so that in the very middle of my bralette looks aligned at both sides. So I'm just folding it over a little bit so that I can have the square directly in the middle before I start cutting. The next thing I'm going to do is place CF at the very fold of the fabric, which is the center front of the bralette, and pin that into place. I'm then going to place my side front directly next to it. We had already added seam allowance when we did our calculations, so there's no need for additional seam allowance at the sides, at the bottom, or at the top. We're now going to go ahead and cut out our pattern, just following the pattern all the way around the edges. Once that is done, this is what we have so far. So we've opened up our center front, and as you can see, it aligns nicely with the side front. This is the sort of shape you want to achieve. We're now going to take pieces one side at a time, placing them right sides together along the dart lines, and just pin them into place. And repeat the same for the other side. Now this is the pattern we're going to work on the back of the bralette. Remember, I was saying you could have drafted a separate pattern for this, But to save paper and to make life easier, what I'm going to do is just place one piece of tape right at the bust line there. That was our bust line. And we're just going to determine the shape we want for the back. Now, you may want to just cut a line straight across there, but the problem there would be that, remember, we went down 1 inch in the front for the neck depth to get that sharp V lower than our bust line. We should not do that for the back because that would not end up really nice and flat. What you want to do instead, use that same neck depth line from the bust line at the armhole area and draw a slanted line coming down to meet that point. This way our back would basically still be straight with a little bit of slope at the middle area, which is fine. So right where indicated with the blue marker is the line we're going to use for our back pattern. Now instead of center front, that would now become center back because this is the back of the bralette, and side front will now become side back. So the next thing that you're going to do is just go ahead and cut across that new line you set for your back pattern. And this is what we have. So if you were to draft a separate pattern for the back, you would have had to do the bodice pattern first and then insert your dots and all of that. But just to save a bit more time and work, we just went ahead and used the one pattern for the boot. The only downside to this is that now you no longer have the front pattern as one piece. In order to get it back, you would have to tape back those two pieces to those patterns in order to start afresh if you want to make a bralette exactly like this again, or start drafting from scratch. Now I'm winging it along as I go with this design. I wasn't sure exactly the way I wanted it, as I said before, but I'm just going to take off piece from the center back, right? Because we want to do a lace up back now. So if we had left it as is, you would have needed to insert some kind of zipper or like flap it over and do like buttonholes and all of that, but we wanted it to be a lace up back. So I'm just going to take away about 3/4 of that center back pattern, leaving about 1 inch there. So mine was 4 inches across. I'm taking away 3 inches from the center back area and making a line straight down. So we are no longer going to use that big area, which is the majority of the center back pattern anymore. We're only going to use the very small piece because we want all of that space to be there for when we're lacing up our back. And because we don't want it ending up too small, I'm just going to go ahead and add 1/2 inch seam allowance. Whenever you cut off seams, you just have to remember to add back the allowance where necessary. So that's what that extra line is for. Now we're going to go ahead and place our patterns on our fabric. There's no need to place this on the fold because there is no fold in the back or anything. We're doing a lace up back. Only the front was needed on the fold. So we're just going to pin that into place and cut all around it as we did before with the front pieces. The next step is for us to pin them into place. Just be careful of the way you have your pattern. If you notice, I'm aligning them the same way I had the fabric so that I would know which side is supposed to match up with which side. You don't want to get confused, especially when doing these bralettes, because pinning one side incorrectly would definitely throw off the entire design, and then you're going to wonder why it's not fitting you the way it's supposed to. So this is what we have for both our front pieces and our back pieces. I'm just going to join them and pin them along the sides as well to the front pattern. So we're going to end up with one big pattern, one big fabric piece for the entire bralette. The next thing we're going to do is just take this to a sewing machine and sew along all of those seams that we pinned together and press them flat open with our iron. You need to press all of the seams open like I've done here. So I wanted the inside of the bralette to be as clean as possible, so I've grabbed some plain black. You could use the same African print fabric, but I'm going to use a plain black, or it can be any color that your print has, and I'm going to create a lining for it. Now the way in which I'm going to do that, I'm going to fold the pattern that is already ironed, the fabric bralette that is already ironed, fold it in half and pin it on top of the lining. The lining is also folded in half where I place the center front. And if you notice, depending on your bust, you're going to have this kind of curve. As you see, the point of the bralette is showcasing there, but all you have to do is curve the lining along with it and just take your time, pin that into place. There are other ways to do this. We could have cut out all of the exact pieces we did for our bralette, sew them all together as we just did, press the seams open. That would be a great way as well. But this is just a quick DIY video, so I'm trying to make it as beginner friendly as possible. But just letting you know the possibilities, you cut out all the pieces the same way as we did with the first one onto the black piece and sew them the same way. That would be fine as well. Now we just go ahead and cut around the entire pattern. And this is what we have so far. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just straightening my fabric at the top here we want to create some straps for our bralette. We need straps for the actual bralette straps, and we need straps for our loops. So what I'm doing here, I'm just using the width of my ruler. My ruler is approximately 1.5 inches wide, and I'm just drawing along so I can get 3 lengths of straps. Once that is done, you just go ahead and cut out your 3 layers of straps. So this is the right side, that is the wrong side. We're going to put it right sides together for each piece of strap and sew along the edge using about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to go ahead and turn them over as you see me trying to do here. Now I'm using a loop turner. This was a real struggle. Somehow when I'm recording videos, like, things just go downhill at times, but I sped it up because if I left it as that, I would have been turning those straps over forever, because my loop turner didn't seem like it wanted to work at the point in time when I'm recording. It was only working properly when I'm not recording it, so that happens at times. So we're just going to turn over those 3 straps and iron them out nice and flat. Once that is done, right, so once that is done, we have these nice flat straps to work with. Thing I'm going to do, I have my bralette with the right side facing up, and I'm just going to take one of the strap and pin it into place like so. And we're going to repeat that for the other side of the bralette as well. When I pin it in place, I left about 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch extra above, just to make sure that we're gonna get it sewn in properly there. You don't want to be sewing and then you're not catching the bralette strap properly. Then we're going to take our lining piece, place the right side onto that right side, and just go ahead and pin it all into place. I'm going to remove the pin from where I had it there and just line it up with the lining and pin it back into place. What's left to do here now is just pin the entire top of the bralette from one end to the next, ensuring that you're capturing both lining and the main piece and the strap that you already inserted there. The next step is to go ahead and sew along the very top of that with a regular straight stitch. And this is what we have once that is done. you notice that the very top of the strap I went across straight, and then I followed along all curves when I was sewing it, right? So the next thing to do is cut a slit down the middle of the top. But when you are slitting these, you have to remember not to cut the actual thread that you already sewn. So just making small slits going all the way from the end to the other end, but make sure that you do not cut the thread. For the top of the straps, just cut that straight across like so, and continue slitting along to the other end. And we're not finished with it on the wrong side yet, but I will just turn it over so you can see what it looks like so far. You can do that. This is very important, so you can pull out the straps at the top and see if you've sewn them properly, if they're twisted or anything. At that point, you try to adjust it. Now we're going to go back on the wrong side, tuck those straps in. Those straps need to stay inside. Okay guys, they need to stay inside and ensure that you do not stitch them down when you're stitching around the bottom. Now I decided I wanted like a cute little frill instead of leaving it straight across like that. So what I'm doing here is just measuring along the very end of the waist for the bralette to see how much I got, and I got 22.5. Now when we did our circle skirt video, we went to Buy Hand London circle skirt app and we inserted our measurements. So we're doing a full flare below. You can choose whichever length you want or adjust it accordingly. And we're just going to put in our waist measurement, where mine was 22.5 for my client. And it does the maths for you very, very easily. So our radius we have there is 3¼ inches. Now with my fabric like this, I have it folded already, and we're going to fold it again. We want to create a flare, so then we just need like the corner that is closed, basically similar to when you're doing circle skirts, and I've done a video on that already and showing you how to use the calculator, so you can go ahead and watch that. I can link it in the description as well if you need extra help with this part. And we're just marking around a 3¼ radius like so, and you can put your flare below your bralette however long you want. You can even make it long to cover down to your knees. Make it into a dress if you want, honestly. It's really up to you. But you would have to figure out how to close up the back more properly if that's the case. So I'm just doing my 5 inches from the curve that I had first, 5 inches long, because I wanted the finished one to be about 4 inches. So I would need a ½ inch to attach it to the actual top, and then another ½ inch for when I'm hemming it below. So that will give me my 4 inch once I'm finished. So this is our flare. It's completely closed up. We're just going to cut down one side only so that we can have one full piece to go along the end of our bralette. Now at this point, what I'm doing here, I'm taking my bralette, it's on the wrong side. I'm just going to check at the end to make sure that the flare length that we cut would match up properly, leaving a bit of allowance to hem at the edge for our bralette, and you can see that it fits well, right? Now we just want to make a little notch at the middle there to find the center point. You can also use your chalk to just mark where the middle is if you don't want to notch your fabric. I'm just going to repeat and mark the center of the bralette as well. But I'm notching because this fabric is very beautiful, it's very colorful, and I want to be able to see it properly. And it wouldn't affect anything when we're sewing, so yes. Now what we want to do is insert the flare inside of the top, right? Just look carefully at what I'm doing. It's right sides together. The right side of the flare is going to match up with the right side of the bralette. Tuck that under and ensure that all the straps are also tucked under, and pin it into place starting at the middle. Then starting at one end, you're just going to go ahead and pin that all the way down, leaving about an inch should be left back on each side of the flare itself and not the bralette top. Now when you get to the very end of the bralette top, you want to fold in onto the wrong side, half of an inch on both the main fabric and the lining fabric, like so. And of course, repeat the same for the other side. Now you want to take this to your sewing machine and sew along the very end of the waist. This is what we have once this is done. And now you can go ahead and flip it over to the right side. At this point, an excellent idea would be to iron it, but I was feeling a little bit lazy. Well, I didn't do that, guys, but I promise I will next time. But I can go ahead and work with the fabric as is, as it's not that bad. So the next thing that we're going to do is work on our loops and hemming the side of the flare. So to clean up the edge of the flare, we're just going to fold it in twice, one fold and two fold, about 1/4 inch per each fold, and then we're going to pin it into place, right? That's for the very edge of the flare. Before we get to that, remember we had done three lengths of straps we already attached to, and we have one length of strap remaining. This one is what we're going to use for our loops at the back. Originally, I believe I wanted 4 loops on each side, but I decided at the last minute I would go with the 5 because, you know, just to make it a little bit closer for the X design in the back. But you can use how many amount of loops that you want. You can use 3, but it needs to at least have 2 loops each side. So what I'm doing here is just bending in the 1/2 inch I had at the back for the allowance that we had added on the pattern, just bending it on the inside because we're going to be doing a top stitch along here. And I'm cutting the loops. My loops are about, I believe, 2.5 inches long. You can cut them a length that you're comfortable with to ensure that when you're pushing it inside of the bralette, you have enough allowance for it to be stitched in properly. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut the loops. All of my loops are the same size. I would have about 5 for each side, so that's 10 loops in all. Right, they're about 3.5 inches long, sorry. So that's just a correction to make. So 3.5 inches long per loop. I'm folding it in half so it ends up in the middle, and I'm inserting one at the very top of the bralette first. When I measured down from the top of the bralette, I had 6 inches, so I was just trying to divide them equally. That's why I ended up with 5 loops. I said I would space them 1.5 inch apart. Now to make life easier, I'm just drawing a mark, just placing a mark at every 1.5 inch mark that's in between the top and the bottom of the back of the bralette, so I'll know exactly where my loops are supposed to be inserted. I'm just putting the loop in half and just inserting it, ensuring that I try my best to line it up equally as where the first one was. And remember, you need to sandwich it between both pieces, the main fabric and the lining. So you're putting the loops directly in between so that by the time you do the top stitch, you won't see any raw edges on that side at all. And you're going to repeat those steps for the other side. Now once that is done, this is what you're going to get once you've sewn down that side. See, nice and clean on the outside and also on the inside. And this is what it looks like once I've done both sides. That same straight stitch that I top stitch, I carried it straight down to the edge of the flare. So that's why that side is hemmed as well one time. The last thing we're going to do is fold in the edges twice using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sewing along the edges. Or if you have a serger, you can serge the edge and then fold in 1/2 inch, whichever way you prefer. But I created this video, you notice I never used a serger. It's a beginner friendly for persons who don't even own a serger, can make something like this. Well, that's it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I truly appreciate the likes, the comments, the shares. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you have any comments or questions, don't be afraid to leave that in the description box. It will really help me. Any suggestions or any ideas that you have for videos, you can go ahead and leave those in the comments as well. I truly had a lot of fun making this, and I hope that you would at least try it and that you'll have fun as well. Until next time, thank you so much. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Bye-bye.